Congratulations, you've just found the #1 over 50 health and wellness podcast on the planet. Hello and welcome to the Over 50 Health and Wellness Show. I'm your host, Kevin English. I'm a healthy aging expert and I'm the founder of The Silver Edge, and I am on a mission to help men and women just like you build lean, strong, healthy, amazing, capable bodies they love for the rest of their lives. All right, folks, where are my pet lovers? Where's my dog lovers? Where's my cat lovers? We are doing something completely different on the show today, and it's going to be a blast because this week we are diving into something that we have never actually explored before on this show, and that is natural health for your pets. And trust me, folks, this conversation got fascinating fast. So today I'm joined by internationally known integrative veterinarian, Dr. Judy Morgan. And wow, let me tell you guys, she brings over 40 years of experience to the table. She is, listen to this, she's an author, she's a speaker, she's a podcast host, a acupuncturist, a chiropractor, she's a food therapist, and she is one of the true pioneers in the world of holistic pet care. And in this episode, we get into all kinds of fun stuff, all the things, right? We talk about raw feeding and pet nutrition and vaccines and flea and tick medications, heartworm prevention, dental health, longevity, and even the surprising ways our pets may actually help us age healthier and happier. And listen, if you've ever looked at that bag of brightly colored kibble and thought, there's no way this is the pinnacle of canine nutrition, you're definitely going to enjoy this conversation. And as somebody who currently has a pack of dogs and cats running around my house at all times, I personally found this episode to be incredibly eye-opening. So whether you are a hardcore pet parent, maybe you're a casual dog lover, or somebody who just wants their furry companions around for as many happy, healthy years as possible, I think you're going to get a ton out of this one. So whip up your protein smoothies, grab your dog, and maybe even your cat if they'll tolerate that for more than, say, 6 seconds, and let's dive into this fascinating conversation with holistic veterinarian Dr. Judy Morgan.
When I was 12 or 13 years old, I was a horse show kid. And so I got my first pony when I was in 7th grade. And oh man, somewhere in high school, I had this lovely old show pony, and he had become so lame, he was no longer able to be shown, he was no longer able to be ridden, and we just wanted to put him out in the field and let him live out his days with his pony buddies. But he was so lame, he wasn't even capable of doing that. So my riding instructor's daughter had graduated from veterinary school, and she was an equine veterinarian, and she came home from Canada for the summer. And I was crying about my pony, and she said, well, you know, there's a surgery that we could do. We can take the nerves out of his front feet so that he can't feel them. They're numb. Can't ride him, but he'll be really comfortable out in the field. And we said, well, that sounds amazing. And so this was like the early to mid 1970s. And my parents were kind enough to fork over $600 to have the surgery done, which I look at that now and go, God, if I could get anything done for $600.
That's what I thought, yeah.
But it was a lot at the time. And so she actually we did the surgery right there in a field at the farm, which is actually much cleaner than being in a hospital, I've now learned. And she let me help. And then she taught me how to do all the bandaging and the aftercare. And I thought this was the coolest thing. And the pony got to live for a couple more years out in the field with his buddies very comfortably. Yeah. And so, you know, from that moment, I was hooked. Like, oh, if I could do something like this and make a kid happy and make an animal live longer comfortably, why would I not do that? So that was it. So, you know, all through high school and college, I was very single-minded, like, nope, going to be a veterinarian. And at that time, I applied for veterinary school in 1979, 1980. And at that time, there were very few women in the field. And it was very hard to get in, especially I was a kid from New Jersey. And New Jersey didn't have a veterinary school, and there were actually only 7 schools that would even accept my application because most schools only took their in-state students. So it was a grind, and you know, I got so tired of people saying, you'll never make it, you'll never make it, you'll never make it. At that time, 1 in 13 applicants got in, and I said, well, then I just have to be the one.
Yeah, right on. I love it. All right. And look at you. Here you are now, right?
It worked.
It worked. Yeah, it worked. Well, fantastic. All right. So I want to talk about your area of expertise, obviously, is in all the natural health for pets. And for our context here, we're just going to talk about most common household pets, which are
Sure.
dogs and cats. And for frame of reference, just so everybody knows, dog lover, cat lover, I've had dogs and cats my entire life. Currently, the pack looks like this. I've got 3 dogs and 2 cats in the house. So that's how we roll over here at this household. My daughter's got a couple dogs, and they're part of the pack because they're over here all the time as well. So lots and lots of dogs, lots of cats. But I want to, before we start talking about the health of our pets and things like that, I wanted to start like this. How do animals, pets in particular, and I'm talking about, let's just stick with dogs and cats because I'm sure you have the special relationship that we could talk about with horses and other things, but just dogs and cats that most people have, how do they enrich our lives? And could we make a case that having a pet is actually healthy for us, and maybe even, could we even stretch that and say that it would impact our healthy aging or even our longevity?
Oh, absolutely. So we have great studies showing that being in the presence of animals lowers our blood pressure, lowers our heart rate.
Mm.
And particularly as we're aging, I'm definitely in the over 50 crowd, like way over. And, getting out and having to exercise your dog. And actually, a lot of people take their cats out on leashes now, and they have
Yeah, it's a thing.
catios, and the
Yeah.
cats
Uh-huh.
really need that interaction as well. But getting outside, getting moving is so critical. So we see it even in like senior living spaces where the seniors are allowed to bring a pet with them. They're much more active, much more engaged. One of the things that I did when my children were young, I did about 40 visits a year to hospitals, nursing homes, assisted living facilities. And we had this menagerie that we would take with us. We had a llama, we had 2 miniature horses, a chicken, a chinchilla, dogs, cats, miniature goats. And I would load all these animals up in my trailer and my minivan with my kids. And we would go do these basically house calls with this menagerie of animals. And they were all really well trained. And believe it or not, llamas and miniature horses will only poop in their own pile. So you
Yeah.
can take them into a living room, you can take them into a hospital, and they're going to be fine.
Yeah.
And so we did that quite often. And, I'll never forget this little old lady sitting in a living room at an assisted living facility. She was sound asleep when we walked in. And when she woke up, there was literally a llama standing within 3 inches of her. And she kind of did you're not
Yeah.
allowed to have that animal here. I said, yeah, I am.
Yeah.
But the change, I mean, we would see people who literally were catatonic, hadn't spoken in months. You put an animal in their lap and suddenly they're engaged and they're telling you about their pets when they were younger. So they have a huge, huge impact. We have great studies showing that a senior person who lives alone is extremely lonely and usually pretty unhappy. But when you put an animal there with them, it totally changes their whole reason for being. It's like, oh, now I have someone to take care of. I have, there's just a lot that goes on with that. I'll never forget, we had this 85-year-old client, and she lived alone, and she had a cat, and her cat died. And I thought, oh man, and her children had predeceased her, but she had a grandson who would come to visit. And so her cat died, and we had a cat who lived at the clinic who looked a lot like her cat. And after I put her cat down, I said, I know this is really bad timing because you need time to grieve over your cat. I said, however, I don't want you to be alone. Would you like to take our hospital cat, UV, home with you? And she said, oh, no, I can't. I need time. She literally got as far as the front door, turned around and came back and said, could you put UV in my carrier? I
Yeah.
can't go home alone.
Yeah.
And so she had that cat live with her until she was 95.
Wow.
And she fell and had to go into rehab for a few months. And so my office manager twice a week would take UV to visit her at the nursing facility and sit and read books to her and just let her pet the cat. And it was the best therapy ever. So animals have a huge impact on us. And anybody who likes animals at all, you don't have animals in your life, find something that you can manage. Cats are definitely easier to manage, but you do have litter boxes and that sort of thing. They don't have to go out for walks, whereas, your dog, may not need to go out on a leash walk if you have a fenced yard, that sort of thing. But the companionship, the health benefits, if you go in the hospital and you have a pet at home, you want to get home. You want to go home and take care of that pet. And we live on a farm now. My mother lives with us. She's 89. And she does all of the care for the chickens, cleans the chicken coop, takes care of all of our cats inside and outside. When we're away, she takes care of all the dogs. Somebody else does the farm animals. But for her, I used to say, oh man, I shouldn't let her clean the chicken coop. This is too much work for her. And then I had this epiphany. Oh, wait, no, this is keeping her moving.
Yeah,
This is
100%. Yeah.
like using muscles. Nope, Mom, you get to clean the chicken coop. Go to it.
Absolutely love it. Go get the eggs, clean out the coop.
Exactly.
Keep up with all these animals. Yeah, I love it. I had a sense that we would go there. I do feel like certainly pets enrich our lives. They really do. And you had mentioned they bring, the blood pressure and stress. And of course, an animal when it's sick or throwing up or something may increase your stress temporarily, but overall, and I'm filled with wonder every time I think back of the history of domestic, especially when we look at dogs, which are basically wolves, and cats, which descended from a feral feline creature, and just the relationship, this bond that we've made. Am I correct in saying that a wolf and say a pug, for example, are genetically identical? That they're not similar, but they're genetically identical? Or is that how does that work?
Identical.
Okay.
There's been some changes over time, not a whole lot. Like if we look at the digestive tract, so a lot of people who are like raw feeders and do primordial and that sort of thing, they're exactly the same as a wolf. Well, their digestive tract has changed a little bit over the eons, but not that much. It's still very similar, and their dentition is still the same. A dog and cat's teeth, they're made for ripping and tearing and then chewing, and they're definitely made to be meat eaters, not grain eaters. So there's definitely enough similarities there that we can look to the ancestry as far as how we treat those animals now. And they became domesticated by coming to basically the scrap heaps. Yeah. So when people would eat their food, there were bones and, parts that weren't eaten, and they were put in a big mound. And the wolves and the wild animals said, hey, if we go over there, we can go get some good stuff that, it's all put together in one place. We don't have to do a lot of hunting. So it became a symbiotic relationship. And, then the dogs started being domesticated as, hey, we can use them for guarding. We can use them for herding. And, and we can have mice for chasing rodents and keeping our communities rodent free. And it's really interesting. My breed of choice is Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, so I have small, fluffy dogs. And when you look at the history of those dogs, they were used to go into the bed of King Charles to attract the fleas so that the fleas didn't bite the king.
Nice. Okay. So they were little flea magnets. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Because I've heard that before that, genetically they're identical, but of course they've evolved and we've just selectively bred them into these different jobs, but certainly great companions being one of them. And I think that's, if you look at ancient man and you look at modern man, there's the genetically we're identical, but our facial features are much different. We have also evolved and domesticated ourselves, I suppose, in some way. All right. So Dr. Judy, I want to talk, let's start here. I'm big. We talk on this show all the time about nutrition, but to be honest, we've only talked about human nutrition up until now. I want to talk about animal nutrition, pet nutrition. I want to start here. I once went to a vet who I told them I was feeding my dogs at the time raw food. That's a standard. You go to the vet and they say, what are you feeding your dog? And I said, oh, I feed them raw food. And I just got this look of horror. And then I was told by the vet, not by a vet tech or by an assistant or somebody at the front desk, but by that vet, that the best thing I could feed my dog for health was, I might get this wrong, it was a Purina product. I think it was Purina Pro Plan, perhaps. Maybe that's the brand they sold. I'm not sure. And immediately, now, just fast forward, she's no longer my vet, but immediately a red flag went up. I was thinking to myself, as a human nutrition expert and claiming no expertise in animal nutrition expertise, it just seemed to me that a very highly processed kibble with 30 something ingredients would not in fact be the optimal thing for my dog's diet. So with that as background, let's start with dogs. What should we feed dogs? What should we be feeding our pets? What should we be considering at dinner time for pets?
So we can pretty much lump the dogs and cats together.
Okay,
Cats are
good.
obligate carnivores. They're metasauruses. They are not cornosauruses.
You're right.
So cats need meat in their diet. As a clinician, when I had my practices, if a client wanted to make their cat a vegetarian or a vegan, I fired them as a client and said, your cat's going to die and I can't do anything about it because you're feeding them incorrectly. So kibble is a form of convenience for pet owners. But I can tell you that there are so many good companies now that are making raw and gently cooked, high quality human grade products that that are just as convenient. Open the package, put it in the bowl on the plate, however you're feeding your pet, and it's just as convenient. Yeah, you might need freezer space, you might need refrigerator space, unless you feed freeze dried. And then you don't even need that. You need shelf space, no different, and actually it takes up less space than the kibble bags. So we have a lot of problems with feeding our pets kibble. And I like to equate it, if you took your child or your grandchild to the pediatrician and the pediatrician said, look, here's a box of Cheerios. It has all the vitamins and minerals your child needs. Just put this in a bowl, give it to them dry twice a day. Don't let them eat anything else because they'll unbalance that balanced nutrition, which is a fallacy anyway. Right. But don't let them eat anything else. You would say, I'm running screaming out of this office. They're nuts. Like I'm not feeding although so many people do feed their children highly ultra processed food that is so bad for them, which is why we have a lot of the problems we do. And the same for ourselves. Ultra processed, basically when you look at extruded kibble, which is the extrusion process to make that dry kibble, is the same as what the Kellogg brothers invented to make cereal. So, Kellogg's cereals. We now know that's ultra processed, it's full of sugar, it's full of carbs, there's nothing good about it. So our animals have zero requirement for carbohydrates in their diet. So they have a certain minimum for protein, a certain minimum for fats. They need, certain amino acids, vitamins, minerals. But nowhere in there do they have a requirement for carbohydrates. They do have a requirement for fiber, which does fall under the carbohydrate category, sort of, because we could use fibrous vegetables, but we could also feed hair or feathers, which is what they would eat in the wild. So if a wolf catches or a fox catches a chicken, it's going to eat all the feathers too. Yeah. It's got a lot of the trace minerals, and it's got that fiber source. And that fiber source is required for the bacteria to work in the gut to make short-chain fatty acids and nourish the brain and work on the immune system and all that. So that's why we have that fiber source. So when I formulate for animals, for cats, they're meat, bone, and organ. So we can feed raw bone. We can't feed cooked bone. But meat, bone, and organ for cats is going to make up 96 to 98% of their diet. And then the other 2 to 4% is that fiber requirement. And so we have different ways we can get that. I tend to use some vegetable matter because I think it's got some other bonuses for us as well. For our dogs, we want that meat, bone, and organ to be more like 85%-ish. So they can have a lot more in that other category, which could be vegetable matter. But what we don't want to see is something that's cooked at really high heats, which the extrusion process requires very high heat. And a lot of those products also have rendered meals in them. So rendering is like the worst of the worst. It's where all the waste products from the human food industry, all the animals that just died out in the field, like what are you going to do with those? You can't send them to the landfill, so we send them to be cooked into this big soup. And that soup is then dried out and made into meat meals. And so that is commonly used. So we've got multiple cooking steps for these extruded products. And with all of that cooking and all of that high heat, we destroy a lot of the nutrients that started out in all of that. And so they have to add in a vitamin mineral mix. And that vitamin mineral mix is synthetic vitamins and minerals, which come from the petroleum industry. And, they cause a lot of inflammatory problems in the bodies of our pets, which is why we're seeing so much chronic inflammatory disease. But we also get something called AGEs, which are advanced glycation end products when we heat things to high heat, and those AGEs are cancer causing. So why are we seeing 3/4 of our dogs with cancer after age 10? They're being fed the wrong things for their entire life. Cancers grow on sugars. Well, carbohydrates break down to sugars, starches break down to sugars. An extruded product has to have at least 50% carbohydrates because that starch is needed to hold it together. Otherwise, it just gunks up the machine and it can't. So you can't have a high meat extruded product. It just doesn't work.
Interesting.
And our animals are meant to be metasauruses. So now we're feeding, so they have zero requirement for carbohydrates, but if we're feeding an extruded dry kibble, we're feeding 50 to 60% carbs. So it's totally backwards. It's inverted. It's not how we should be feeding them. And so, but it's convenience. It has a long shelf life.
Right.
And, it's easy to travel with because it's dry, but unfortunately, a lot of people store that food completely inappropriately. So the other problem with when you have these little dry, burnt brown balls that you've added synthetic vitamins and minerals, you also have to spray them with fats and palatants, which makes it taste good, makes it smell good, makes it taste good. But those fats that are sprayed on there become rancid when that product becomes exposed to air and light. So once you open that bag, it's starting to oxidize and degrade. It's also starting to get storage mites. And we have a lot of pets with allergies, and those storage mites contribute to that. So for anybody who is feeding a dry kibble product, you want to buy a bag that's small enough that you're going to use it up in 3 weeks or less. So that's more trips to the store. I had one client once who had a little 5-pound Chihuahua, and he said, "Oh, I buy one 50-pound bag of Purina dog chow.
It lasts
me
year.
for the whole year."
Right.
And I just went,
No, don't do that. Yeah.
like, please don't do that.
Yeah.
So, and it needs to be stored completely sealed. It needs to stay in that bag because you'll notice the bag is lined with sort of a plasticized lining. And that's so that it keeps out air and light, and then it needs to be stored in that. So you can take that bag and put it inside another container, but don't dump it out of the bag. And don't keep it for more than 3 weeks. Don't store it in high heat. Don't store it in sunlight. So where do people keep their pet food? Usually it's in the garage. Here in North Carolina, that's really hot in the summer.
Yep.
So we're just feeding rancid food, which, is then increasing the inflammatory problems. So over the past decade, I would say, we have seen a resurgence of new companies, smaller companies that are making human grade foods, not the waste products from human food industry. They're actually using, restaurant grade, human grade, grocery store grade foods to make pet food, and they're making them low carb and still convenient. And that's really the goal, is to get people to move their pets away from the ultra processed food, just like we're doing for ourselves, and move them toward whole food diets. So for somebody who says, "Oh, I can't afford it, I don't want to do that, blah, blah, blah. I'm scared. My veterinarian has scared me to death over feeding raw food because they all have these big signs in their office telling you're all going to die," which is... So it just makes me a little crazy. I actually, one of my dogs got sick on a trip to Canada, and he had bloody vomiting and diarrhea. He was really stressed out from the trip. And so I just needed to go get some IV fluids for him. And I walked into this vet office, and they stayed open late to see me. So God bless them. I was so ecstatic that somebody was willing to even be open for me to have the dog. But I walked, and my dogs are raw fed. And so I walk in, and there's this big sign talking about how feeding raw is going to kill your dog and kill your family. And I went, I'm not going to tell him what I feed this dog, because then I'm going to have to listen to the lecture of that's why he has bloody vomiting.
It's easier to just say, "I feed kibble," and they go, "Oh, great."
It's just no, I haven't fed him for 3 days. He's vomiting.
Yeah, right.
So, but that's what they are told, and that's what they believe, because that's what they're taught. So it's not that your veterinarian's being mean, they're not being rude, they just only know one thing because that's what they're taught in school. And so, like, people who follow me and my clients, if they had to take their dogs or cats to a specialist, or even I learned this, or to an emergency facility, you just say, "I feed them a commercial brand," or "I make my own food," whatever it is. If you mention the word raw, one of my dogs was going in for surgery, and my husband made the mistake of taking in his little bag of food because he was going to have to spend the night. And they looked at it and they said, "Oh my gosh, is that raw food?" And my husband went, "Yeah." And they went nuts. Like nobody would touch the dog. They all ran and got caps, gowns, masks, gloves, booties, and said the dog had to live in isolation while he was there because he was a raw-fed dog. And then they made my husband go. He said, "I'll go home and cook some food and I'll bring that back."
Well, that's all right. So why though? Because you're right. My current vet also has a sign, and when I tell them I feed raw, and they, well, but what's the danger? Why are
there isn't any? There isn't any. And here's
what's the perceived danger?
The perceived danger is bacteria. Like they're going to be shedding salmonella, E. coli. Everybody in the family is going to, die of
So kind of like if I was to eat some raw hamburger out of the refrigerator, probably not a good idea because I don't really have the digestive system for that.
Right. So dogs and cats have really low stomach pH. And the part that gets overlooked, and this is in my first book that I wrote, but the number of people who have died from salmonella contamination in kibble is big. The number of people who have gotten sick from handling raw pet food is basically non-existent. So they don't even look at the statistics that are out there because kibble can be contaminated just like any food could be. Yeah. And by the way, most of us handle raw meat in our kitchens, and we know how to handle raw meat. The raw meat that you buy in the grocery store, over 2/3 of the chicken and poultry products are contaminated with nasty, nasty bacteria. But USDA allows that because it's assumed that you will cook it. There are a lot of people who eat it raw, but it's assumed that you will cook it. So for our pets in the pet food industry, FDA has a zero tolerance for any bacteria in raw pet food because it's going to be fed raw. And they don't want people handling contaminated products, which is really funny because we're all handling contaminated meat products in our kitchen every single day.
That we're going to eat for ourselves, yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Right.
And they just assume that people are too stupid to clean their kitchen counters and utensils when they handle dog food, but not when they handle human food. I don't get it. So it's been handed down from CDC, and then AVMA, AHA, all the veterinary groups latch onto that. But they all ignore that kibble can be contaminated. And let me tell you how many children crawl around on the floor and are picking up kibble and eating it, eating dog biscuits. I mean, when I was a kid, I ate those stupid dog biscuits. So it's being handled by people with a compromised immune system all the time. And that's not looked at all. So what I would say to people is always wash your pet's food bowls, just like you would wash your own dishes and utensils. Wash your hands after handling any kind of pet food, but really the raw pet food that is marketed and regulated by consumer groups like FDA, they have a zero tolerance for bacteria. So it's actually much cleaner than what you're buying in the grocery store for yourself.
Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. All right. Well, here's another thing that comes up that will raise some eyebrows. My dogs love, say, chicken feet. They love chicken wings, chicken thighs. They love chicken necks, bone and all. So obviously I wouldn't do that cooked. Any problem with an animal eating the skin, the bone, because I've got a big dog. One of my dogs is a Scottish Deerhound, and watching him scarf down chicken wings is fun. It's a little scary, like four crunches and it's down the hatch.
So if your dog,
any danger in that?
If your dog has never eaten those things, don't just throw him a chicken neck and walk away. Because every dog eats them differently. Some of them will chew them up like they're supposed to. Others, like I have one, he's a little 10-pounder, and he got a hold of a freeze-dried chicken or a dehydrated chicken foot, and he decided he softened it up a little bit, and then he tried to swallow the whole thing. It was stuck in his throat. Luckily, my husband said, "Hey, something's wrong with the dog." So you need to know your dog, and if you've never fed them something like that, you need to hold on to one end while they learn to chew on the other end. But it's very healthy. We process our own meat chickens on our farm, and so my daughter saves all the heads, all the feet. All that goes to, she has big dogs, all that goes to her dogs. She actually even feeds her dogs and her cat all the feathers. Just mixes them in with the food. They're very digestible, great trace mineral source, fiber source. So, and they are so digestible. Like we thought, okay, we're going to see feathers in the poop. Nope. Totally digestible. So, I mean, I wouldn't recommend feeding a whole meal of feathers, although there actually is a dry kibble product on the market that the main protein is chicken feathers. So,
no kidding.
it's a hydrolyzed product for allergies.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
So
Well,
crazy. But yeah, they can eat
yeah.
all that stuff, and it's the best dental care that you can give your pets is raw meaty bones.
Yeah.
But never feed cooked bones because they will splinter. That's a
Right.
disaster.
Yeah, those big, and they're cheap too. You go to a butcher or even in your supermarket a lot of times, maybe in the frozen section, they'll have those
Hmm.
raw meaty bones.
Hmm.
Yeah, my chickens love those. My dogs absolutely love them. And you want to keep your dog occupied for a while, throw a couple of big meaty bones in the yard and watch them go at it. So I wanted to talk about dental health because one of the things with pets in the house, they get stinky breath, or my vet says, hey, it's going to cost you $1,000, but I gotta scrape the tartar off your dog's teeth, or we have to do some dental. Should I brush my dog's teeth? What do I need to know about dental health for dogs and cats?
So they're really no different from us. And it's a myth that kibble will clean their teeth. That would be like your dentist saying, hey, eat crackers. That'll keep your teeth clean. Don't worry about brushing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. So the gold standard is to brush our pets' teeth. Now, there's a lot of nuances to this. The smaller the breed, the worse the teeth are going to be. Just they have bad enamel. They're they're genetically a dental train wreck. So if you have a small breed, you have to be much more diligent about dental care. Big breeds like your Scottish Deerhound, he's eating raw meaty bones. That dog may never need anything done with his teeth because he's naturally taking care of them. And larger breed dogs just have better dental health overall. Uh, so brushing, it's the same as us. Like
Mm.
ideally, we would brush our dogs and cats' teeth twice a day, every day. I've got a lot of animals. No way that's happening. So there are a lot of different products on the market. And if you look on our website, drjudymorgan.com or naturallyhealthypets.com, you'll see a lot of different products listed for dental health. So some of them are things that you add to the food. Those are usually like seaweed based products because it does help to break down tartar and plaque in the mouth. There's a product called Teef, Teef, which actually changes the microbiome, the bacterial makeup in the mouth. And as the microbiome changes, we get more or less plaque. So there's that sort of product. There are drops or sprays that you can use, again, helping change the microbiome, helping dissolve some of that plaque. And then there's certainly, dental chews that are made specifically to be a kind of a longer acting chew to help break down that tartar because it's the chewing mechanism that actually does a lot of the work. So ideally, we would be brushing that. And if you have a small breed of dog, and for a lot of cats, it doesn't matter what you do, they're still going to go in and need that $1,000 dental. And one of the things that I really hate are the non-anesthetic dental cleanings because they're nothing more than a cosmetic procedure to scrape that tartar off. 75% of dental disease is under the gum line. So if you're seeing a bunch of tartar on the top half, guaranteed you've got a bunch of stuff going on
Underneath the
under the
gums.
gums.
Yeah.
And you can't see that just by scraping off the tartar and plaque. The only way you can do that is to get those dental x-rays, and they're going to need sedation for that. And I know people get really wigged out about, oh my gosh, my pet has to undergo anesthesia. I can tell you in 40 years of practice, we might have lost 3 or 4 animals from anesthesia. Usually it's cats who have underlying heart disease that was not detected beforehand because they're really good at hiding it. So, and I've done so many senior animals, so many animals with dental disease, with heart disease, kidney disease, liver disease. We just tailor the anesthesia, and I mean, my mother's 17-year-old dog had to have specialty dental surgery. So we took him to a specialty dentist with a board certified anesthesiologist also present. And so, you can go to any level, but if you have an animal who has a lot of special problems going on, you might need that level of care
Yeah.
because dental disease is painful. If you've ever had a toothache, let me tell you. And
Yeah.
these animals walk around with loose bleeding teeth and they're like, oh, they're still eating, so the owners are unaware. So I would recommend everybody take a peek, lift the lips on the sides, take a peek at what's going on in there. You might be grossed out. You might be running to get some care.
Yeah.
They're really good at hiding their pain, and a lot of times you'll see them, they're like chewing with their head to one side, or they're dropping food out, or they're drooling. All signs of, hey, we've got some pain here, we need some help. A good way to tell if there's some stuff going on is you can take a Q-tip, cotton swab, lift up the lip on the side and just press along the gum lines, along the teeth. If the gums bleed when you touch them, you got a problem going on in there, because they shouldn't.
Right.
And so you can test that out on yourself. Take a cotton swab and just go along your gum lines. Nothing should bleed. It shouldn't hurt. But if you do that and they go and they start chattering, that's a painful tooth. So easy to see what's going on, or feel what's going on there, depending on how they react to it. And if you've never brushed your pet's teeth, the way to get them kind of used to it is take a child's toothbrush, so a soft pediatric toothbrush, you can get them at the grocery store, and dip it in bone broth, because that tastes really good, and start playing with that and letting them taste something. Like, don't start with a pet toothpaste, because it's not going to taste good. The other thing you can use is coconut oil. Works really, really well. It's a really good antibacterial, so you can brush with that. A lot of people do
Oil pulling.
Yeah. Well, good luck getting your pet to do that. They're just going to eat the coconut oil, which is healthy for them, but it does work really well for brushing. So, try to get them used to it. If you have an animal who there's no way they're letting you in their mouth, then they're going to have to go see the vet and have them look in the mouth.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Interesting stuff there. Yeah. I have seen the commercially available pet toothpaste. It's like chicken flavor and beef flavor.
Yeah.
And
We do have on the website, there's a blog about what to avoid in dental products, because there's a lot of bad chemicals.
I was just going to say, I'm guessing, just like human toothpaste, most of the stuff you see in the grocery store, the drugstore, not coming anywhere near my mouth. Yeah, it's horrible.
Exactly.
I'm sure the same thing exists for dogs. All right. Well, staying on nutrition here for another minute. What about, so if I'm feeding my dog, what do we say? You said some meat, bone, and organ, but feeding that my cat, that's pretty much all they're getting. And maybe I'm supplementing some other starchy things or some veggies, fruits, whatever, to my dog. What do I need to think about supplements, or do I? What's the role of supplementation for dogs? Because I know that there's a ton of supplements commercially available for dogs, and now there seems to be a lot. There's a big push in the mushroom space, and there's a big push in just all the peptides and things. There's all of these things, and now people are saying, hey, there's a market opportunity for these crazy pet owners over here as well. What do I need to know about supplementation for dogs and cats?
So if you're making your own meals for your pets, like if you're starting from scratch, there's definitely a science to it, and we need to make sure that they're getting the vitamins and minerals. So one of the things that they need is a lot of calcium in their diet. And so if you are feeding, like you are, the raw meaty bones, and they're eating that bone content, they're probably getting enough calcium. But there are some dogs that don't have good enough teeth to do that. Some just won't touch it. So we need a calcium source, and that calcium source can be ground eggshell, and those powders are readily available. Or we can use bone meal if it's from a reputable source and doesn't have heavy metals and all kinds of bad things in it. And so we actually have a course, Homemade Food for Dogs 101. If people want to learn how to make their own food, it walks you through all the different steps. We have a ton of free recipes that people can download, and they're balanced, so it shows you. So the things that are most commonly missing are vitamin D, and you cannot just throw human vitamin D capsules at them because they're much too strong and you'll put them in kidney failure. So we want to be careful. Zinc and iodine, trace minerals, manganese, very commonly missing in these homemade diets. And so oysters are actually your best source of zinc, and kelp is your best source of iodine. Yeah. And again, all this stuff is explained on our website in a lot of different blogs and things, and in my books. So calcium, vitamin D, and trace minerals are the things that I find missing most often. Cats are much more difficult to balance the homemade meals than dogs, especially getting our thiamine and some of the B vitamins can be really tricky. So nutritional yeast is something that actually works really well for helping balance the kitty cat diets. So we have a lot of that information on the website. What I would say, if people want to start making their own, maybe go to a gently cooked or raw commercial product first, feed that a little bit, make sure that your pets are going to adapt well to it, and then start learning how to make your own. And then this is how I did it 25 years ago. It's like, oh, I'm buying this really nice. There were very few raw products available back then. So we're gonna start with this. All right, now let's look at what's in here and how do I need to, what do I need to do? And one of the reasons traditional veterinarians are so against homemade diets is that people might start with a complete recipe and then they're like, ah, man, I don't feel like handling liver. It's slimy and icky and bleh. So I'm going to leave that out. Or I couldn't find the cod liver oil this time, and so I just left it out. Or I couldn't find kelp, so I just left it out. And when you start leaving out ingredients, then we start getting those deficiencies. And let me tell you, our dogs and cats are really good at kind of maintaining life even on very deficient diets. Like I've had clients come in and go, oh, I just put raw hamburger in the bowl and that's all he ever eats. It's like, oh my gosh, that's not even close. But it's like, well, I've been doing that for 2 years, and you look at the dog and the dog's still running around the room and you're like, God, they're really good at, just like hanging in there. But it's not what we want.
Right.
And so one of the things that we have done recently is we're coming out over the next month or so with very, very simple, minimal ingredient diets with everything that you can buy in your local grocery store. And then we have 3 supplements. It's a kelp, a mineral supplement, and I forget what the third one is. 3 supplements, you buy them as a bundle. And then we've got a pork meal, a turkey meal, a chicken meal, a
You're just adding the supplements to each of those as you go along.
Very simple. And
Perfect.
So this little supplement bundle will last you for many, 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 many meals, like months, if you want to, kind of start dabbling with it and, see what your pet likes. I will tell you that most of them are, if they've been eating a dry kibble and you offer them particularly something gently cooked, they're probably going to dive in head first and say, oh my gosh, you are the best human ever. We've done a ton of rescue work over the years, and it's really interesting. Animals that are raised on kibble and have never seen anything else, you put raw food in front of them and they have no idea what it is, and they're kind of afraid to eat it. You would think they would dive in. They don't. I usually have to transition to gently cooked, then to the raw, because they just don't know what to do with it. It's
interesting.
It is really interesting. Like, you'd think instinct would say, oh, raw chicken, yum. It's not. That they've been so basically brainwashed and addicted to the kibble and the texture, particularly cats. Oh my gosh. If a cat is addicted to kibble texture, it took me
It took
me 6 months.
Cats could be a little picky anyway, just in general, I think.
Exactly.
So I can see that.
So, when I first learned about all this and I had kibble fed cats and I said, oh my gosh, you're eating kitty crack. The crack has to go away.
Right.
Like, they took the frozen medallions and they played hockey with them, and they were just like, I don't know what this is. They didn't know what to do with it. So it took me 6 months to get my cats transitioned. You can do it, and it's worth sticking with it. Now all my cats are raised on raw food and they wouldn't know what kibble is.
Right.
That's preferable.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So that gives us a good start on just the care and feeding of our pets. I want to talk about vaccines. So obviously my government says I got to have rabies and distemper, I think.
Government says rabies.
Government says rabies. Okay. I guess my vet says distemper.
Yeah.
I've got if I want to take my dog to doggy daycare, what do they want? They want Bordetella. Is that right? And
it depends on the daycare. Some of them want distemper, parvo, hepatitis, leptospirosis, coronavirus, Bordetella, influenza, rabies, obviously. Yeah. Lyme. They're nuts.
Okay. So, let's pull that apart. What does my dog need versus what is my cat? When I look at bringing home a puppy or a kitten, what's the natural course when it comes to keeping my pet healthy? When I think about the vet's going to say, hey, you need these shots, you need these boosters. What do I do there? How do I navigate that?
So I've got a couple of books that really dive deep into this. One is Raising Naturally Healthy Pets. And so if you adopt an adult dog, particularly from a shelter or a rescue, they're going to come with vaccines on board already.
Yep.
You're good to go. Puppies and kittens, I see records come in all the time with these poor animals that have had a series of like 6 to 7 vaccines, which is crazy over the top nuts. What they really need is 2. So usually it's for the dogs, it's a combination distemper hepatitis parvovirus. That's like the smallest combo you can get. A lot of vets are using combos that have 6 or 7 things in there, but we don't like to give multiple vaccines at the same time. So even if you're going in for boosters, you want to separate them. The smaller the dog, the more likely they are to have a bad reaction to the vaccine. And the more vaccines given at one time, the more likely they are to have a bad reaction. I just got an email from somebody the other day with an adult bulldog, 7-year-old dog. Went in, the vet said, oh, he's overdue for his leptospirosis vaccine. They gave him a vaccine and he was dead within 20 minutes.
No.
Had an anaphylactic reaction. And I asked the guy to send me the records, and the vet did not jump immediately on, we need to do something about, like, they literally watched the dog die. It was terrible. So there's core vaccines. A core vaccine is what they recommend for all animals. So for cats, it's distemper and rabies. For dogs, it's distemper, hepatitis, parvo, and rabies. So that's going to be recommended across the board. But what we do know is that core vaccines last a minimum of 5 to 7 years and may last a lifetime. So when they get those puppy shots, they might be good for life. The only way to know is to do a titer. So it's a blood test. So you could come back when, they send you the reminder a year after they finish their puppy shots. So when they're about 1.5 years old, you get that reminder card in the mail. It says they're due for their shots. Okay, great. And the thing to do is to go in and say, well, he might still have protection from his puppy shots. I want to find out. Let's do the blood test, titer, and let's see if he's got antibodies to distemper, hepatitis, parvo. Good to go. He's already protected. It's sort of like being pregnant or not being pregnant. You can't be more pregnant. You either are or you aren't. So you're either protected with antibodies
Okay. That's
or
a good,
you're not.
Good analogy. Yeah.
And you can't make him more protected if he's already protected. Can't get more pregnant. You just are. So titers are great. The problem is
Are you saying titer?
Titer, T-I-T-E-R.
Titer.
So the problem is that a lot of veterinarians don't want to do them. They don't want to be bothered having to get a blood draw, and they're going to charge a fortune to do that titer versus the vaccine. So they'll say, well, it's going to cost you $300 for the titer, or I can give you the vaccine for $35. Now, if you're somebody whose pocketbook is a little stretched, you're going to be like,
right.
Okay. Rabies titers are more expensive, and the government won't accept them in most instances. So if you have to license for rabies license for the township, they're not going to accept that. So you're kind of stuck. But the first rabies is a 1 year, and then everyone after that, doesn't matter if you're 5 years overdue, everyone after that is a 3-year vaccine. And you don't want to get it any more often than every 3, you just every 3. So as far as the others, I do recommend doing a titer instead. The problem is not all boarding, grooming, daycare facilities will accept a titer.
Oh,
and so they are a huge culprit, because even AVMA and AHA are sort of governing bodies. On their websites, it says that those core vaccines should be given no more often than every 3 to 5 years. But a lot of the boarding, grooming, daycare facilities want it every year. And so that's an education problem. That is getting veterinarians and pet owners to educate those facilities and say, no, look, it says right here, every 3 to 5 years. My dog had it last year. I'm not giving it again this year. So like where my clinics were, we educated all of those facilities around us. So they accepted our titers and there was never a problem with them. But now I moved, and the groomer that I was going to wants to see those rabies certificates and the vaccine certificates every year. So I groom my own dogs now because I'm not going to do that to them. And then we have all of the lifestyle vaccines. So a lifestyle vaccine would be influenza, kennel cough, Lyme. There's, the rattlesnake vaccine if you live out west. And so lifestyle vaccines, you have to look at the lifestyle of your pet. Do you live in a high-rise apartment in the city? You don't need a Lyme vaccine. Your pet is not going to be exposed to a bunch of ticks. And by the way, I don't recommend that vaccine even if your dog is out running through the woods and fields as a hunting dog. It's not a good vaccine, doesn't confer good immunity. It's only effective about 60% of the time, and it has a high reaction rate. So why? And the problem with tick-borne diseases is there's over a dozen of them, and so we have a vaccine for one. Well, we still have to keep the ticks off because we've got all these other diseases. So don't get the vaccine. Kennel cough vaccine only lasts 6 to 12 months, so you need to give that one pretty often. And it is, if you take your dog to boarding, grooming, daycare, I guarantee they're getting vaccinated for kennel cough every time they walk in the door, because somebody there has had a vaccine within the last 6 weeks, and they're shedding that stuff, sneezing it all over the place, so they're vaccinating everybody. So those are kind of silly. The influenza vaccine is terrible, and influenza is not that common. And unless there is like a known outbreak. And so this is one of those things where the news media is complicit in making a big deal out of nothing. So and I'm writing a talk on this right now, so I've got all this in my head. In 2018 in New Jersey, the news media in the Philadelphia, New York metro area said, oh my gosh, we have a leptospirosis outbreak. All dogs have to go get vaccinated for leptospirosis. So the clinic around the corner from me, they did a drive-through leptospirosis vaccine clinic where people didn't even have to get out of the car. They didn't have to be a client of that clinic. No medical records, no questions asked. You just drive through and your dog gets poked. Now remember, this is a highly reactive vaccine, and I just had a dog, where the client said my dog died 20 minutes after getting the vaccine. And so this clinic made $2,000 in 2 hours with people driving through with their dogs. Now, the outbreak that all the news media picked up was 4 cases in Jersey City, New Jersey. And that caused a multi-state big hullabaloo. And, of course, the vaccine companies push this because they're selling more vaccines. And lepto is spread by the urine of rats, raccoons, skunks, foxes, and dairy cattle. Now, I happen to have all of those things that live on my farm. My dogs don't get vaccinated for lepto. I have small dogs. I would never do it. They're highly reactive. But we did see an uptick, and this is how lepto became now one of the core vaccines that they recommend for everybody. When COVID happened and everybody stayed home, the rats in New York City, remember those stories? And they had to hire a rat czar because the rats kind of took over because nobody was getting rid of rats. And so we see more lepto because the rat population exploded. Okay, well, if I live in New York City, I'm going to put boots on my dog and I'm not going to let him lick anything on the ground because that's a problem. So, so maybe if I happen to live in Jersey City and we've got 4 dogs with lepto, I might think about it. But if I'm 200 miles away and my dog doesn't live in the city, why am I running out to get this vaccine? So we have to look at the lifestyle of our pets. And this is why I get really upset with the one size fits all. Like you go in with your new puppy or your kitten and they go, well, here's our protocol. And, every puppy at 6 weeks they get this, at 8 weeks they get this, at 12 weeks they get this. No, it's not a one size fits all. You need to have a conversation with the veterinarian and say, well, this is what I plan on doing with my dog. My dog sits at home. He never sees another dog. I have 4. They see each other, but they don't see other dogs. So what's their exposure? So you have to educate yourself. And that's what our website and my books are for, so that pet parents can say, well, wait a minute, let me look at the lifestyle of my dog. Let me look at how these diseases are spread. And does my dog have exposure, or my cat, do they have exposure to that? Feline leukemia. Like, why would I vaccinate an indoor cat for that? It's only spread by direct contact with a cat with feline leukemia. Well, my indoor cat never sees another cat. That would be silly. But a lot of times it's recommended just across the board. So it's really a matter of being educated and saying, well, this is what I do with my pet. And so this is what I'll have a discussion about this one because this might affect them, but these 4 don't. So I'm not doing those.
Yeah, it's not a whole lot different than the
kids.
Kids. Yeah, I was thinking about us as humans, right? But I think you're right. Just being educated and knowing people like you, right? These resources to go to educate yourself so that you can make these intelligent decisions, as opposed to, because if you just go to the vet, they've got their regiment they've got their food, they've got their vaccine schedules, they've got their flea and tick, which is where I want to go next, and heartworm. I mean, all of this is mapped out for you. You don't even need to think. But if you just take even a half step back and go, wait a minute, are there alternatives here? And I think that this is, it's just a fascinating conversation. So let's go there. Because the next thing your vet's going to say is, my goodness, well, you have to have flea and tick treatments right now. And heartworm, and now I can get that a 3-in-1. What's more convenient than that? I just give it, and I can give it, once a month.
Convenience.
Again, convenience, right? So do I need flea and tick and heartworm? Let's say I've got a dog or a cat it's usually a dog. Of course, my dog goes outside. Maybe my cats are inside, but my dogs are going in and out. Therefore, don't the cats now need it? Because maybe a dog comes in with a flea or a tick or something. How's that work?
So the Veterinary Parasite Council recommends flea, tick, and heartworm prevention for every dog and every cat every month, all year round, no matter where you live.
Yes. Yep.
That is craziness. Again,
some places don't even have fleas and ticks, right?
Right. Colorado.
Yeah. Right. You're up high enough in altitude. You're blessed to not need to worry about fleas and ticks. Yes.
So, and my dogs, I have a 23-acre farm. So it's a field surrounded by woods.
Yeah.
My dogs don't go in the woods. I never pull ticks off my dogs because they're in my yard, which is sunny and doesn't have a place for ticks. Like, ticks don't want to live there. Mm-hmm. I don't have a tick problem. Why would I put a tick chemical on them? All of the flea and tick chemicals that we use are neurotoxins, which means they can cause tremors, seizures, coma, death. Mm-hmm. And we see hundreds of thousands of those kind of adverse events every year. And the FDA says, we haven't seen enough yet. That was their response when we actually got a conversation with them, which kind of blew my mind that they would talk to us for an hour. But then they blew us off. And I was like, well, thanks a lot. How much money did that drug company pay you?
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So the flea and tick preventative chemicals don't actually prevent your pet from being bitten by fleas and ticks, because for almost all of those chemicals, the flea and tick have to bite your animal in order to ingest the toxin. So it's in your pet's system. The worst one that has just come out is called Bravecto Quantum, I believe. It's a 12-month injection. And there's also ProHeart 12, which is a 12-month injection for heartworm prevention. I would run so fast away from these things because they are neurotoxins. They have a lot of side effects. And once you inject that into your pet, you cannot get it back out. It is there for at least a year, probably a lot longer. And if they have a reaction, there's no antidote. So even on the monthly chemicals like Bravecto, NexGard, Simparica, Credelio, those monthly or every 3-month chemicals, they're not out of their system in a month. They last a lot longer than that. I've had people who have given 1 dose of Bravecto and a year later, they're still finding dead ticks on their dogs. So there's still enough chemical there. The other problem with especially the topicals, but any of these chemicals, is that they are poisoning our waterways, and they're also killing off beneficial insect species. So there was a great study that just came out that showed that the metabolites of these neurotoxins are in the stool of our animals. So your dog poops in your yard, and then the dung beetles and all the little bugs that break it down come along, they all die because these are pesticides. So we're killing off whole species. In the waterways of Europe, every single river is contaminated with fipronil, which is a topical flea and tick medication. They tested the hair of French children. It's contaminated with fipronil. They are testing bird nests. The hair and feathers that they are using to make their nests are contaminated with these pesticides. Now, that might be great because the birds aren't going to have mites and other things. Oh, and by the way, they are also feeding, there's a product called Exult, which is the same as Bravecto for our pets. They're feeding it to chickens, to our meat and egg chickens. There's no withdrawal period. It's to keep the chickens in the poultry houses from being infested with mites. So mites cause a lot of itching with the birds. So they have, decreased production, decreased weight, blah, blah, blah. But there's no withdrawal period. And so the metabolites of that are in the meat and they're in the eggs. And that's what we're eating.
Yeah.
This is why we raise our own meat birds. It is so toxic. And so not only are we potentially, definitely poisoning our pets with potential for severe side effects, but we're also poisoning our environment. And so one of the things that we push really hard here at Naturally Healthy Pets is using natural preventatives, which actually will repel fleas, ticks, and mosquitoes. And then we don't have secondary diseases. So essential oils work really well. One of the problems that we have is that people want to always attack the pet. Oh my gosh, I found fleas on the dog. I'm going to wash the dog. I'm going to spray the dog. I'm going to treat the dog. Well, the flea only spends 5%, and the tick only spend 5% of their life cycle on the pet. The other 95% is in your environment. How are you treating your yard? How are you treating your house? Potentially your car, if you have a flea-infested animal in your car. So we talk about treating the environment. So there are natural sprays, there are natural powders, there are beneficial nematodes that you can spray on your yards, which are little bugs that don't allow fleas and ticks to develop to maturity. So, and the beneficial nematodes have been just absolutely game changer for people who live in the South, where you don't have freezing in the winter to kill off the life cycle.
Right.
So, like, we have 7 outdoor cats. On the farm, you need cats. We have 7 outdoor cats. And I'm not going to put chemicals on them. They can't wear a collar. We have ultrasonic and scalar wave tags that also work really well. Can't put those on my cats because I can't put a collar on them. So I have a natural powder that has neem, yarrow, and diatomaceous earth. Great for repelling pests. Sprinkle powder in my hand, pet the cat. Done.
Yeah.
Once a week, pet the cat.
Yeah.
So we can do things like that. And I will also say that the better your pet's immune system is, the less likely they are to be infested, because parasites parasitize the weak. And so a weak animal is like, we would have, people with a dozen indoor cats come into the clinic. And 11 of the cats would have maybe a flea or no fleas. And then you have this one ancient old dinosaur of a cat who's got thousands of fleas.
Right.
And, parasites are like, I'm going for the weak one. That's what they do. So that's why it's so critical to not over-vaccinate, not wreck the immune system, feed good diet, have a healthy microbiome. And then they're much less likely to have an infestation in general. So as far as heartworms go, they're spread by mosquitoes.
Yep.
And so the temperature has to be warm enough for the heartworm to actually develop in the salivary glands of the mosquito. It matures there for about 2 weeks. So the mosquito has to bite a dog who has heartworms, and then it has to fly around for 2 weeks, and that matures in the saliva glands of the mosquito. And then they have to find your dog, bite your dog, and then it takes about 6 to 7 months from the time the mosquito bites to the time that you actually have adult heartworms in the heart. So when you give heartworm preventative, what you're doing is actually killing the young stages of heartworm that were injected into your dog by the mosquito. So again, it's not a preventative. It just prevents adult worms from maturing.
Gotcha. Yeah.
There is some seasonality to it. So when I lived up north and my practices were up north, it's like, we have frozen tundra up there from about Thanksgiving until April.
Yeah.
Why would I give heartworm preventative? The mosquitoes are not flying around transmitting. It's not warm enough for it to occur. So all of my clients would stop for the winter, and then we'd heartworm test in the spring and start them for the summer. So we actually only gave heartworm preventative about 4 times over the summer. Since I moved to North Carolina, you would think I would be, more worried about heartworms being further south.
Yeah.
My dogs are not on heartworm preventative. My dogs don't spend time outside at dusk when the mosquitoes are active. And if I need to be outside with them when the mosquitoes are really active, I spray them with one of my essential oil sprays, and the mosquitoes hate them. The mosquitoes don't bother them. Yeah. And I test them every year just to make sure that everything is all good. And I know that heartworms are a much bigger problem in the South than they are up north. But again, that healthy immune system, there's a great video on YouTube where they did time-lapse photography. And under the microscope, they have a blood sample with an immature baby heartworm swimming around. And time-lapse, over about 48 hours, it shows the white blood cells of the immune system coming in, surrounding that immature worm and eating it.
Yeah, right on.
And that's what a good immune system does. A
healthy immune system will do, right.
Because it says, oh my gosh, it's a foreign invader.
Right.
We need to attack.
Yep.
And it works really, really well. But if you have an animal who's on steroids, Apoquel, any kind of immune suppressant drug, forget it. Their immune system's not working. So then you need more chemicals to prevent everything else because the immune system doesn't work. So, it's looking, again, at the individual. What's my individual pet's risk of exposure? Cats are not natural hosts for heartworms. I don't give heartworm preventative to cats. And if a cat develops heartworms, they'll only develop 1 or 2. That's all they can fit in their heart. And the symptoms are actually hard to diagnose. And the most common symptom is vomiting. Okay. But I've never put a cat on heartworm preventative because it's just not very common.
Okay. Well, Dr. Judy, we've covered a lot here. I've learned a lot personally. I like this. I've got my brain kind of ticking along here, thinking about my pets because I want them to be happy. I want them to be healthy. I want them to have optimal health, just like I want people to have optimal health. So as we're wrapping up here, you mentioned a couple of resources, obviously your books, your website. People that are excited about this and they want to learn more, where do we want to send them?
So we actually have a deal for your listeners. If they use code over50 on our website, naturallyhealthypets.com, they will get 50% off of any of my books. I think I have 8 or 9 on there. I'm working on number 10 right now. So naturallyhealthypets.com. We also have another website, Dr. Judy U, but you can get to it through the first one, where we have over 40 courses. And so they're for people who want to dive a little bit deeper. Some of the courses are made by me. Some are made by other people in the holistic pet space. So if you have an interest for, wow, that feeding raw meaty bones sounds pretty cool. I'm a little nervous about doing it. We have a course on that.
Nice. Yeah.
So you can learn how to do that. You can learn how to make your own pet food. We've got training videos, all kinds of different things in there. And like I said, our goal is really, we have a lot of products on the website. They're all natural products that I have personally chosen. They're all human grade. I'm not going to give it to my dogs unless I'm willing to take it myself. So I've pretty much tested everything on the website, which is a little weird. But I mean, that's just the quality that we're looking for. But really our goal is to be a resource for education. And, if you're thinking what brands of pet food are good, we've got a list for you. Another website that is amazing for this sort of pet food information is truthaboutpetfood.com. That's Susan Thixton. She is a wealth of information. She has been the consumer and pet advocate in the pet food space for about 25 years, just doing tons and tons of work for our pets. So truthaboutpetfood.com, highly recommend that website as well.
Fantastic. All right. So folks, I am going to put all of this good information into the show notes. You guys can find that on whatever app you're listening to this on, or head over to our website. Dr. Judy also has a podcast. I think that's Naturally Healthy Pets. Naturally Healthy Pets podcast. Great information there. But I'll throw all of that into the show notes. You guys go check that out. Dr. Judy, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing all your wisdom and your knowledge with us. And I love the work you're doing. I just encourage you to keep up the great work.
Thank you very much.
Okay, that's our show for today, folks. If you are over 50 and you feel frustrated or stuck and you want a clear plan, then I invite you to book a free clarity call with me. You can find a link to learn more in the show notes for this episode. You folks can find that on whatever app you're listening to this on, or head over to silveredgefitness.com/422. As we wrap up our time together today, you can show your support for this show in 2 critical, important ways. One is to tell a friend about this podcast and encourage them to give it a listen. The second is for you YouTube folks to please click the like and subscribe buttons, and for you podcast folks to please consider giving this podcast a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on, and be sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss any future episodes. I really appreciate you spending your time with me today, and until next time, stay strong.